You are listening to a Roamcast with Neil Kramer.
My name is Harry Palmer.
Yeah, we don't want to do anything to scare your children. That's the last thing we want to do. We don't want to scare anybody.
The land is alive. It has being. It experiences. It is perfectly aware of who we are, together, and as singular, intimate individuals. Everything that occurs within and without is witnessed and understood. It sees us. It dreams with us. Our acquiescence, our lamentation, all heard and felt. The wisdom of the land is arcane. The numberless forms within its bosom share in a profound sentience. In rock, wood, dirt, leaf, in paw and tooth and fin and wing, everything resonates. This is the body of the Mysterion. Elemental fire, water, air, earth, the magical ether, a sequence of life to contemplate slowly. And I am pleased to say the buzzing is bees in the wild flowers, and they remind me to recognize that we are part of the Mysterion, and it is part of us. For the mystical human, the soul, willingly devoted to encountering the sacred unfoldment of life, for such a person, one of the remarkable powers of the land is its capacity to remember. The land knows what happened today, and yesterday, and last week, last year, 100 years ago, 10,000 years ago. Indeed, it holds an unbroken chain of remembrance from the beginning, a vast, prodigious, flowing chronicle, finely articulated, authentically witnessed, a feeling, emotion, a seeing, a purpose. And it is not the informational layer of things that is held, not the journal of a second-hand account, for that would be purely representational. No, it is the very thought of creation itself. What every day felt like. The momentous and countless earth changes. Sweat, salt, muscle, granite. The ferocious elemental wrenching of the mountains and oceans. The tender upwelling of spiritual illumination. Everything. The land has memory. It shows us that in comprehending the extremes, both experientially and philosophically, only through living those extremes can we know the centre. To map the farthest shore of lightness, to map the farthest shore of darkness. These are what enable us to identify the centre of ourselves, to locate and sustain equilibrium, inhabiting the central point of graceful power. The land has foresight too. It knows what is coming. It is always showing us what will be. The environment is filled with this prophetic poetry and sacred image. An idiom so gorgeous in execution that many lose themselves in the enchantment of its surfaces, completely missing the inner meaning, though this is a very delicate crime. Nature is divinity made visible. The Creator as sculptor, painter, musician. God in his joy and unfathomable ingenuity. For certain, an enigmatic hand, as much as a heavenly one. We are formed from the substance of this celestial thought, born from the mother who has been given life by the Father. We arise from this clay, though it is not our origin. The human alone is given mortal flesh and immortal soul. A soul that may be harnessed and loved and refined to transmigrate oneself over infinite epochs of ages. A soul that will withdraw if the human self chooses to disavow the impulse for spiritual discovery. The natural world is a guide in all matters of spiritual life. It never stops in its munificent expression of heavenly law and metaphysical tutelage. And many people see themselves, don't they, as quite separate from nature, quite apart from it. They feel less entitled to consider themselves much a part of the natural world as, say, a robin, or a mouse, or a fox, or a tree, or a lake. They are natural, dissimilar to the human. The deer in the woodland seems to have more permission to be here than they. They feel divided from the green grass beneath their very feet, unlike the tree or the caterpillar that dwell with it. Most people see nature as some sort of background, like a movie set. Scenery for photographs and postcards. I would say that most people cannot even see it at all. Many who have held close to the cities and suburbs and the prevailing cultures within those places have chosen to disengage from nature. Even those who swim and kayak and play golf and cycle and hike, most do not see where they are. Through their own determination, they blind themselves to the truth of what radiates all around them. They partake in a mental projection not a sacred body. Nature constantly invites us to partake in its union, to transpose hardy independence and entwined celestial matrimony, to surrender utterly to its swelling waters, to lose ourselves in the beguilement of its dark veils, to listen to its elemental music, to visit its equilibrium, to attune ourselves to its signal of elevation and excellence. To do this, we must acknowledge the truth. We must grasp our origin and that from which we are made. We are natural. We are organic. We channel the land through our soul. We may have distanced ourselves from nature, become uncomfortable with its seasonal cycles and impersonal forces, like a house cat or a pet dog, who can play in its sunshine for the afternoon, go for a walk and soak up the sights and sounds of nature. But when the hour comes for shelter, for food and water and sleep and companionship, then the haven of the house is sought, warm and dry, clean and secure. Nature cannot be owned like property. It is not real estate. It is the living thought of the Creator. It engenders spirit and love. It knows and feels and imagines just as we do. If there is no nature in our life, no wild, untouched spaces, then we can have no connection. Nature is the faithful and abiding guide to all who seek true spiritual wisdom, to free themselves from misconception. The exquisite wilderness compels us to attend with presence, to bring ourselves into harmony with the place we are in, not to analyze and commentate, not to indulge in escapism and fantasy, but to be, to open, to change the triangles and squares into a circle, to become a curve in the artistry, to walk in silence is to allow the power of nature to arise within oneself. Silence, not just in words, but within one's own ruminations. To turn the volume down as much as possible from our perpetual chatter of 7 or 8 or 9, down to 5, to 2, to 1, to 0. No thought, only a slow river of perception. When we do this, we permit a greater wisdom to channel into us, the force that shapes the world-making word. This is the nous of the hermetic aspirant, the bridge between the all and its 10,000 things, its objects and forms, its routines and rituals, its colours, its causes and effects, its motions, its ever-shifting tapestry. Nous is demonstrated everywhere in nature, if one knows how to look. Today I am sat on the side of a mountain overlooking the forested hills and valleys in an undisclosed location in Washington State. It is a secret place because of the unique energetic properties of this land, well known to earlier native peoples for millennia. And there are actually 7 or 8 special places within this 1,000,000 acres of trees and mountains and lakes and meadows and creeks and gorges and this long prehistoric coastline. It is an oceanic climate with both temperate rainforest and alpine areas. Lots of wild spaces, wild animals, big and small. A genuinely exceptional environment. Ancient, holy ground that helps one place oneself in the order of things. Exalted and reverent all at once. In spirit, in blood. Just as it ought to be. And I am fast developing a love for this land, which only deepens with each return. I am becoming hopelessly and impossibly infatuated with this sublime goddess. I hope we grow old together. Attachment and non-attachment dancing in each other's arms. And one day, in some other world, I shall think of this voluptuous province with keen affection. We will be far from each other for a while. Different realms, different frequencies. But today, I am pleased to rest in the flawless elegance and primal power that lies all around me. Every sense filled only with what is natural, seamless, carefree, pure. I am grateful to be here. When the weather is sunny and clear, when the sky is blue and the sun beams its rays upon us, we feel a particular way about the world, about what is around us. Our emotions shape themselves to these climatic conditions. The warmth, the dryness underfoot, the brightness and clarity of the colours, we experience their tone and meaning. We absorb their teaching. And when the weather is rainy and cloudy, when the sky is grey and bruised, and the sun is hidden, and the temperature drops, we feel a different way. In the forest, in just a few more months, I will move in the cool moisture, in the mist, the sounds muted, the colours subdued. A quite different quality and ambience to the environment. This too contains a profound teaching. Different to the summer. The elemental conditions of spring, summer, autumn, winter, each bring very precise emotional and contemplative gifts. And within the 7-year cycles, there are 3 sets of 7 years for our spring, summer, autumn and winter. 0 to 21, 21 to 42, 42 to 63, 63 to 84, and after that pure play. But those seasons show us something critically important in our ordained time. In the sun, rainfall, snow, mist, ice, breeze, hurricane. In drenching and desiccation. In the greens and browns and blues and greys, we come to know that the weather is fundamental to the natural equation. the mist, and the mountain are one thing. So whilst it is natural for the human to often favour one sort of weather over another, the mystical impulse draws us to a truer reflection. All weather is perfect in its moment. Let's make that plane disappear, shall we? There we are. That's better. So after a time, one ceases to prefer anything. Every day, the weather is carefully calibrated to bring the most profound and relevant teachings imaginable. Think of it, what is the weather if not simply a higher energetic expression of the elements themselves? Air, water, and fire moving upon the earth, liberating and transforming in motion. Like Asayahal, the great elemental air spirit of the northern Oregon coast, spoken of in a previous Roamcast. There is a rhythm in this land, a pulse that radiates and withdraws, outward and inward. An energetic tide that rises and falls. A seasonal heartbeat that harmonizes all the beings who move in goodness within it. The land is a teacher of high repute. If we open our eyes in a new way, empty the mind so it can delicately hold new forms, merging our essence with nous, then we may consider ourselves virtuous in our aspirations. It is the time of year where soon I will be holding my annual gathering. We sometimes call it different things: a seminar, a workshop, a conference, a class, an assembly. But what it really is a bunch of excellent men and women coming together in fellowship to consider the truth of the world. To listen to my words, to listen to each other's words, to learn from the extraordinary knowledge and warmth of all the attendees, to witness, speak freely, share, observe, make new friends, and maybe even to meet one or two very special people who are there just for you. That happens quite a lot, people tell me. So come. September 8th, 9th, 10th. Come to beautiful rural upstate New York at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck. And what a lovely job they do hosting me and my tribal brothers and sisters. All of us kick-ass, mystical, full-signal, succulent aspirants of the supernal flame. You bet. It's very wonderful, you know. You may have heard some of the audio recordings, which tell you a little of what goes on there. But there's no substitute for actually physically being part of it. So, go on. Get the resources together. Get yourself to our gathering. Join the men and women, young and old, beginner and advanced, who come together in joy and sincerity and study and friendship to empower and smile. Invest in yourself. Make the pilgrimage. Learn what you will not hear anywhere else. Be with us.
There's a little girl in the back. Her parents are on board. If you're the parent, we need to talk to you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Alaska Airlines Flight 682 with service to Denver. Your flight crew is Captain Smitherman and First Officer Mosher. Your flight attendants are Sandy, Gina, Mary, and my name is Wendy. We're here to ensure your flight is safe and comfortable. Please pause use of electronic devices and direct your attention to the flight attendants as we review the safety features on board this aircraft. We'll be dimming the cabin lights for departure. Your reading light is located directly above you. We're happy to have you on board today, and we hope you'll enjoy our 2-hour and 10-minute flight to Denver.
The old order changeth, yielding place to new. And God fulfills himself in many ways. And soon, I suppose, I shall be swept away by some vulgar little tumor. Oh, my boys. My boys, we're at the end of an age. We live in a land of weather forecasts and breakfasts that set in, shat on by Tories, shovelled up by Labour. And here we are, we three, perhaps the last island of beauty in the world.
I would say I am operating at about 40% of my capacity. I do not worry about this because I appreciate that there is an upward curve through the natural course of a spiritually enlivened man's life. An attainment curve that sees him come into his power around about the age of 63. The 10th 7-year cycle, a time of inward ascendancy, where the 6+ decades of life have reaped a great harvest, a life of exploration and discovery, a life of suffering, feeling, dissolution, creation and cultivation, a life of dignity and purpose. So it is at this time, at 63, that one may consider oneself rightly a man of worth. As the magical winter approaches, where all illusory forms begin to dissolve, and the genuine and the eternal emerge, a time of inward ascendancy prepares the vessel for true selfhood, pure being, and the glorious homeward voyage. Even so, some may linger and play, perhaps even for a further decade or two, and that is the prerogative of every luminous soul. Now, to the present moment. In normal life, where we equate normality with the mainstream culture of empire, if one was raised in a normal household, with normal folks, attending normal school and normal work, then it would take at least 30 years from the moment of initial awakening before one may claim any level of spiritual adeptness. So if you began walking your spiritual path at 15, you'd be 45 before you might look upon yourself as mature. If you started at 25, you'd be 55. If you began at 55, you'd be 85, and so on. It takes a very long time, and it is very hard work. Most people never do it. Even among spiritual aspirants, they often resign their commission and just live a life that appears spiritual, even to themselves, but is not. And you may say, well, what does it mean to begin walking one's spiritual path? Is the genesis of this impulse in our youthful fascination with the supernatural? With ghosts, UFOs, wizards, witches, magic, ESP, staring up at the stars and wondering just what are they? What do they mean? Where do we come from? Is this the seed of the path? Well, we could be very kind and say, yes, in a way. Sure, that's a good place to begin. But it's not walking the path. To walk the path is to devote oneself to total personal transformation. Only through transformation can we know reality. Purer and purer being is needed for deeper and deeper comprehension. So we must go to the darkest caverns and face absolute immolation, purification, to walk into the inferno that will annihilate all identity, all beliefs, all concepts, to reduce oneself to ashes. To rise from those ashes as the phoenix. Regeneration from apparent nothingness. So it is purity not in the sense of chasteness, wholesomeness, to live like a monk or a nun, to refrain from the primal impulses. Not those things. Not to run from them or suppress them, but rather to harness them, to master oneself as a heavenly animal, to transcend the incarceration of the flesh through owning it, to overcome the darkness by experientially invoking it within oneself, then transmuting it to fire, possessing oneself in full concord with spirit, to recognize that, to know, we must die. Perhaps then, rather unsurprisingly, most people have little interest in this procedure. In fact, they evade it at every opportunity. No appetite for transformation. They seek escape, comfort, diversion. Okay. Nobody else's business, that, is it? People can do whatever they wish for themselves. Yet we observe that many of these same people will claim great adeptness, great maturity in their spiritual development. They equate their many years of a passing interest in metaphysical matters with deep transformative work. They sometimes put themselves forward as teachers of timeless and profound wisdom. They meditate, do yoga, take plant medicine now and again, read many books, wear spiritual clothes, watch documentaries, adorn themselves with magical items, and communicate in a certain New Age vernacular. And all of these things are in themselves totally neutral. And indeed, the men and women of deep wisdom that I know, they also like to meditate and do some yoga, learn from the plants, read, wear loose-fitting earth-coloured clothes, watch documentaries, wear beautiful silver and amber and turquoise on their bodies. And they too often use a particular kind of language. Yes. But there is one massive difference. One gigantic, bone-splitting distinction. And it is this. The first group of people feel that by doing their daily practices and observing various ritual forms, they are living spiritually. The second group of people do not. The second group see that ritual practice body forms, objects, mantras, modalities, and ceremonial observances are but a minuscule, nominal, Lilliputian, slender, trifling part of any serious spiritual life. Whereas for the first group of New Age folks, the alternative escapists, the positivity junkies, it is really all of it. Their spirituality is nothing more than a kind of selfish sedation. That is what they are honestly maintaining, and very little else. And that first group, the New Age people, composes 99% of the spiritual community around the world. Newcomers and old-timers alike. Most people enter into spirituality as a lifestyle choice. These are the lunatics and vagrants that our old friends George Gurdjieff, Peter Ouspensky, and Maurice Nicole warned us not to waste our time with. People pretending to live spiritually, even to themselves, but who really are just adopting a fashion, going through the motions, however diligently, however long or short. No inferno, no phoenix, no dark cavern, no harnessing, no cultivation, no transformation. So it is with each passing year, I feel more and more, through meeting thousands of people across the world, that the true spiritual impulse, embodied as a daily transmutational method, is incredibly rare. As a friend sometimes says to me, admittedly when in one of her more playfully contemptuous moods, people choose falsehood because it is easier. And she is right. And are we to... Hello, B. Came right on my hand then. So in saying these things, are we to worry about judgment, discrimination, prejudice and all that baloney? No, because no one at any point here is needing to judge the value of someone's soul. Even if such a thing were possible, which I doubt, barely being able to gauge one's own soul progress, we don't need to appraise the blue book value of someone's soul. No, sir. We are merely observing demonstrated behaviour. We ignore the words. We focus only on action. Being. The established evolutionary path of one person, how they have changed, how they have grown, matured, deepened, how they have attained equilibrium in their moment-by-moment being, and how they have attained alignment in their home, work, and fellowship. These things can be judged very simply, because they are impossible to conceal. Very visible and prominent in a person's life. Only takes a few hours, maybe a few days, or at longest a few weeks, to fairly establish the actuality of where someone is at, how they choose to live, how they evolve, or how they stay the same. It's very straightforward. It speaks for itself. It's right there in front of us. Total quality judgment necessary. Easy. A conscious act of astute discrimination. Essential to the spiritual human. A crystal clear lens through which we may magnify all that is good and bad, and then make a decision. And we ought to use this magnificent instrumentation on ourselves 1,000 times more than we ever turn it toward anyone else. The more we hone the seeing of our own internal state, the more we can comprehend what is outside, what is in the hearts of others. Not the value of anyone's soul, forget that. You can't do it anyway. That's God's business. but rather we are seeking to discern the authenticity of someone's actions. We want to know who is doing it for real. Who has learned that in transforming oneself in devotion to spirit, that the secrets of the world are revealed one by one. In such a person, the wisdom is in their footsteps, not words.
You don't listen, do you? You don't learn. You don't know the truth. You're not worth bothering with.
But you will come with me tonight.
When you like, where you like.
Ha! Ha! What? This is just like the old days.
Home in my kitchen. Well, let's make a cup of tea. I'll wait for that. When I was a child, TV was good. There was creativity, originality, decency, and tremendous love and care in things. I used to watch programmes, call them shows in the States, don't they? I used to watch Bagpuss, Camberwick Green, Trumpton, Mr. Ben, The Clangers, The Moomins, The Mr. Men, The Magic Roundabout, Paddington Bear, Bod, Finger Bobs, The Flumps, and stuff like that. And within the film or animation, there was time and space to watch things unfold slowly, to feel and listen and think and take it in. Plenty of space, room to breathe and imagine. And one of my favourite shows was called Take Heart, and it ran from 1977 to 1983. So that's from the age when I was 5 to 11. Pretty formative years, really, very important time in a child's life. And the premise of Take Heart was very simple. A kind and gentlemanly artist called Tony Hart, H-A-R-T, get it, who was in his mid-50s at the time, made art. That's what the show was. He made art. He painted and sculpted and stenciled and sprayed and drew and carved and cut and animated. And did all these exciting art projects, many of which, you could do at home. Four minutes. Okay. And there was some brilliant stop motion animation with a little dude called Morph in the show as well. Morph was a little guy made of plasticine, which is a kind of modelling clay for those who don't know. And Morph lived in a box, and he would come to life and do all sorts of silly and marvellous things. Just a little guy, just a few inches high he was. But it was Tony Hart's artwork that was so inspiring to me, and many millions of other British kids too. He made you feel like you could do it, like you had an artistic impulse inside you too, and it could come out and make beautiful and striking and magnificent things. And they had this section on the show called The Gallery, where for a few minutes, to the tune of Cavatina, we would see all the paintings and drawings from children who had sent their work into the programme. I loved that. And it was an unthinkably slow section for any television audience. so unhurried, so lingering, so deliciously measured, with this soothing classical guitar music behind that you can hear now. And you would never see that today. Never. The other day I was witness to a young person watching a television show, a Disney Kids sitcom show. And this child watching it is 5, 6, 7 years old. And this show, this Disney sitcom, was a real humdinger of insidious conditioning. All collectivism, all bright colours and super diversity, leading to this homogeneous sameness, slackness in everything that people did. Very ignoble principles, decadence, selfishness, poisoning really of children. And all accompanied by this dreadful canned laughter, just to make it even more odious. And if you wanted to be really melodramatic here, you could call that child abuse, because that's what it is, abusing children's minds, abusing their chemistry, their brain chemistry. That's when Empire gets them. It enters through the blue portal of the mind and works its way down this poison into the green portal of the heart, and finally down to the red portal of the primal being of the child. And then when you have that, you can tell them what to do. And so they instill these ideas of socialism, globalism, vanity, emotional conceit. It's all over the scripts. The way they treat race, gender, sexuality, identity, noble conduct and truth is repulsive. And this cultural conditioning, undetectable to kids, as indeed it is to unwary parents. But it is there, I can assure you of that. Profoundly damaging behavioural indoctrination, hardwired into children, telling them how to proceed down the corridors of empire. I have no children myself, so I do not at all fully appreciate the stresses and strains that day-to-day parenting brings, because I know it's really quite difficult not to put your kids in front of stuff on Netflix. Just say, hey, go watch the kids' stuff. If the kids have been acting up and you've had a long day, I get it, I understand. I only have, just a little experience in being Uncle Neil to various little kids now and again, which I enjoy. But it's a small amount of time, very modest. I cannot advise from a personal point of view in how to tutor kids. I can, however, tell you what hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of other conscious, excellent mums and dads say to me, what they have told me over the years. Men and women of substance. And what they say is this: with every passing year, you have to increasingly limit the exposure of children to the internet, especially streaming stuff on Netflix and Amazon and all those kind of things. Otherwise, the children become conditioned in the wrong-heartedness of mainstream culture, its decadence. Now, everyone says these days, don't they? Everyone says, oh, we don't watch TV. We don't have a TV. We very rarely sit in front of a big screen. We cut the cable. You know why people say that so often now? Because we're carrying the bloody TV around in our pockets. The screen has moved from the corner of the room to right inside your phone, inside your tablet, your watch, your computer. So they might not sit in front of something in a room, but instead it's on everything else. So I have learned, for me and for the people I care about and who ask me, who ask my advice in my family and friends and clients, own and discipline your technology. Own and discipline your own technology. Educate yourself and those who depend on you. Make wise decisions so decades, trust me, decades of arduous deprogramming will be unnecessary. Social media disconnects people. The internet is mostly garbage. Mass communication makes life purposefully more complicated, more stressful. That's what it's for. So all you have to do is turn it off. The world opens to me more the less I have to do with technology. I use my computer to do things like this, but sparingly. The more we disconnect from the hardware, the more we connect as a living soul. The more the world will share with us when we've proven our ownership of the technology. Technology helps me to create. It helps me focus on the subjects that I care about, and it helps me have fun, draw, paint, study, listen, learn, share, talk. Sure, all that. But I own it. I decide how it's used and when it's used, just for me. And those around me can choose to do whatever they wish. I never preach, never. Not to wife and sister and parents and friends and brother-in-laws, nothing. Never tell them what to do, never even advise them. Unless they ask and say, hey, what do you do with your laptop? What do you do with your phone? Do you have notifications about stuff? Do you have news feeds? What do you do? Then I'll advise. So having kids just streaming media all the time from what looks like a safe place like Netflix kids channels is a lovely, lovely control mechanism of empire. Really creepy, really sneaky. But that's within our control, completely within our control. All we have to do is think about it. Oh, it's better. The other day, a man said to me, "Are you happy?" And I said, "Yeah. Yes, I am." He said, "What, all the time?" I said, "Well, I never think of it. I never really try for it. I don't pursue it. I don't try and maintain it in any way. It just comes." And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, I know it's kind of philosophical, this. You know, bearing in mind this was just a guy in the street who we just got chatting for a minute. I said, happiness is cultivated by living truthfully. And he just looked at me, this guy, and smiled and walked off in a polite way. And I don't quite know what he was thinking, but that was the most honest thing I could tell him. We go and sit in the sofa in the living room. Bring me tea. So happiness is cultivated by living truthfully. That's my working premise. I've been road testing that for a couple of decades now. And it works for me by fulfilling myself, by aligning the outside with the inside, by trying to conduct and comport myself as well as I can, well by my own measure. I don't know what it is for anyone else, just for me. So we have this maxim in my spiritual method, the supernal path, which is this: your personal fulfillment is your sacred work. So depression arises from unfulfillment, from misalignment, from telling ourselves that our choice to live in disharmony against what we truly want is okay. A bitter and hollow sadness arising from bearing the weight of an ongoing dissatisfaction. And some carry this weight for only a short time before they buckle, whereas others seem to carry it for their whole life. But you can never quite conceal the emptiness of the soul void. Depression will arrive, guaranteed, from a life of continual misalignment. Having home, work, and fellowship that do not harmonize with who we are and what we aspire to become. I myself do not perceive depression as an illness, not in itself. It appears to me as a symptom of concealed forbearance. Or to put it very simply, it comes from living in opposition to the truth of oneself, from living a lie. A legal lie, a patient lie, invisible for a long time, but a lie nonetheless. And everyone feels depression from time to time. It's quite normal. It's quite ordinary for that to happen, I think, for a little while. Everyone has experiences of energetic misalignment, to feel the brokenness of the world, the horrible fragmentation. In your life, around you, in your family, in your own heart, in the cities and streets, everywhere there is pain. And if you are sensitive, which most good people are, feeling this pain may cause us to withdraw. To seek hermitage or sanctuary from the disagreeable and dissonant world outside. When it becomes chronic, however, this withdrawal, when depression blights us with its crushing despondency and isolating disconnection, then we must ask ourselves, how long are we prepared to live in misalignment? Empire asks us to do it every day. To live in concealment, to live untruthfully and just swallow it. In imperial culture, everyone is secretly unhappy and unfulfilled. It's just the way it is. In natural life, in the life of the spiritual sovereign, the powerful human, fulfillment is important. It's not a nice to have, it's not optional, it's not a side quest. It is the thing. It is a yardstick for one's own attainment of selfhood. The true and living expression of the heavenly animal, in the primal, the emotional, the intellectual, red, green, blue, the warrior, the poet, the scholar. The foundations of a spiritual life. And when the foundations are in good shape, and selfhood is achieved to a threshold of sustained quality, then, and only then, the real work begins. To find equilibrium, one must become a master of both illumination and darkness. How else can we embody the truth? It is more in blood and tears than in dreams and meditation. Darkness. To map the perimeter and dimensions of one's own sinister, sexy, subversive, dangerous cave. Before that is done, one cannot leave the cave. We are left, like Plato's plebs, watching shadows on the walls, believing they are real. Learn from the single source of real illumination, the sun. We can read of it in the Corpus Hermeticum, Book 16. The Creator, that is to say the Sun, ever links heaven to earth, sending his substance down from above and raising up matter from below. He draws everything around himself and into himself, and from himself gives all to all, bestowing his light in abundance. For it is he whose beneficent powers not only pervade the heavens and the air, but reach down to the lowest depth in the earth and abyss of the sea. If there is a spiritual substance, then it is the body of the sun, which his light contains. The sun alone, being near to himself in place and nature, knows of what his substance is made and whence it flows. We cannot see him, but by systematic efforts we can understand him. The choir of spirits, or rather choirs, are placed under the command of the sun. Choirs because there are many different kinds of powers. And in this sense, a power is like an entity, so I'll say entity next time. They are set in formation under the stars and are equal in number to them. Thus arrayed they serve each of the stars. Some of these entities are good, and some are evil by nature, that is to say, in their activity. For the essence of a spiritual entity is its activity. There are also some who are a mixture of good and evil. All these spirits have been given authority over affairs upon earth and over turbulence there. They cause a variety of disorders, both publicly in cities and among nations, but also in the life of individuals. For they shape our souls after themselves, and arouse them by residing in our sinews, in our marrow, veins and arteries, and even in our brain, penetrating as deep as our very entrails. The spirits who are set as attendants beneath each star, according to what each birth merits, take possession of each one of us at the moment we are born and are given breath. Never stationary, but turning about, they change places from moment to moment. Now when these spirits enter the two parts of the soul through the body, each agitates the soul according to its own activity. But the rational part of the soul stands free of the tyranny of these powers and remains fit to receive God. When, by way of the sun, that rational part in a man is illumined by a ray of light, and such men are few, the spiritual entities cease to affect them. For no spirit or God has any power against one ray from the supreme God. But all other men are born and led, both soul and body, by the entities, whose activities they dearly love. It is their thinking which is misled and misleads, not the love. Thus the entities have control over all our affairs upon earth through the instruments of our bodies. This control Hermes called destiny. All that excerpts from Book 16 of the Corpus Hermeticum, and I'm reading from the edition that appears in the Way of Hermes, translated by Clement Salomon, Doreen van Oven, William Wharton and Jean-Pierre Mahe. Great book. Also contains the definitions, which is another little nice sequence of maxims. So you should check that out, because it shows not only origin, it infers not only purpose, but it also shows a path to salvation through that mysterious, enigmatic, physical manifestation of divinity in the sky every day above our heads. How very intriguing. Everything is there for us to see, should we wish to see it. But once you see the power of the solar portal, of this celestial engine of goodness, it will change who you are.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Roamcast. Neil Kramer loves you. You heard clips from the following: dialogue from the Ipcress file, the song Analogic Part 1 by Fordedelis, the song Mind Spacing by Fordedelis, dialogue from Withnail and I, dialogue from the Sweeney, dialogue from The Return of Sherlock Holmes, Cavatina, composed by Stanley Myers, performed by John Williams. If you liked any of those clips, support the artists and go buy their stuff. That's all for now. See you again soon. Until then, we wish you a beautiful day.